When Irish hitman Michael Boyle gunned down London gangster Tony Brindle, the hit was intended to send a message. Boyle had been sent specifically from Dublin to kill Brindle. This contract killing was meant to demonstrate that Irish gangs were now moving onto the international stage and were prepared to take on anyone who stood in their way. The operation had taken months of planning. But even as the bullet struck Brindle, Boyle's plans began to fall apart. Over 5% of Irish homicides are contract killings, and that figure is rising year on year. We've got one of the highest rates of gangland assassination in the developed world. What does that say of this country? To help me explore why Ireland has become a mecca for assassins, I'll be joined by forensic criminologist David Wilson. As a former prison governor and an academic, he has over 30 years' experience of the criminal underworld. Together we have identified 4 types of assassins operating in these islands. Novices, journeymen, dilettantes, and masters. Each has a unique set of characteristics and traits. In this series, we're going to try and delve into the mindset of the hitman and try and explain why Ireland has become one of the contract-killing centres of the planet.
I've come to South London to conduct a criminological autopsy on the hit that Mickey Boyle commits on Tony Brindle. Now, I know that Mickey Boyle is a seasoned criminal, but the criminological autopsy will allow me to assess what kind of hitman is he. Is he a master? Is he a journeyman? Or is he a novice? I'll be able to determine that through looking at the preparation and planning that goes into the hit. I'm really interested in why so many hitmen choose to conduct their hits on the doorstep of their target. And speaking with a number of hitmen, they've told me, in fact, it's something very instrumental. Their target is thinking about things domestic. They're not concentrating on what might be about to happen when they leave their house that day. It's quite clear that Boyle had planned this hit very, very carefully. He'd clearly checked out the location on a number of occasions. He'd stolen a van, he'd modified the van so that he could shoot at Brindle from within the van. He wasn't very good as a hitman, though, because he effectively sprayed some bullets at Tony Brindle. Brindle survived. He was trying to crawl back into his house, and therefore Boyle had to get out of his van to finish him off. And here's when something extraordinary happens. Because Brindle was involved in organised crime, there was actually police undercover agents in a van park close by, and when they realised that the hit was going on, they got out of their van and they shot at Mickey Boyle. Boyle falls here, Brindle's lying there. Air ambulances come, take each of them to different hospitals, and frankly, this is the most extraordinary hit in this entire series. We've got the target shot, and we've also got the hitman shot.
Hi, David. Hi.
Look, I'm in London, and I've just been to Rotherhide, where Mickey Boyle commits the hit on Tony Brindle, and I need you to do a couple of things for me.
Yeah.
Firstly, investigate his past. You know, what is it that propels Boyle to want to commit a hit at all? And secondly, is there any evidence that he may have committed a hit before, or am I really dealing with a novice hitman?
Retired police officer Brian Cherry has followed Michael Boyle's career with interest. In the mid-1990s, Cherry was one of a number of Gardaí investigating Boyle's criminal activities. What was Michael Boyle's early life like?
Well, he was brought up as a young man, in Bray, County Wicklow. He was born in 1946. He was the second eldest of a family of 6. So he was the 3 boys, 3 girls. He went to the Presentation College in Bray and did his leaving certificate. Very respectable family. His father was a sergeant in the Irish Army and his mother was a legal secretary, and very respectable.
Where did it all go wrong for him?
I think things started going wrong for Michael shortly after his leaving certificate. He got engaged with the wrong crowd and started committing burglaries and got caught for a few of them, but he was still a juvenile at that stage.
Even though he was still only a young man, by the late 1960s, Boyle was becoming a well-known figure to the police. Former Superintendent Tom Connolly remembers the young criminal on the rise. When did you first come across Michael Boyle?
In 1967 or thereabouts. There had been a telephone message from the Gardaí in Portlaoise, which was about 30 miles south of Naas, that there was after being a crime committed there. And the culprit was heading towards Dublin in a stolen Morris Minor car, who happened to be Michael Boyle. Between that and 1969, he had appeared in court numerous times. He was in Bray District Court, Dublin District Court, Dublin Circuit Court on 2 occasions. And in all, over the next couple of years, he had been sentenced to several periods of detention.
And what kind of crimes was he being charged with at the time?
Mostly, at that time, housebreaking.
However, events in Northern Ireland would set Boyle on course for a life in violent crime. As the province erupted into sectarian violence, a host of Irish Republican paramilitary groups sprang up, and Boyle was immediately drawn towards them. One man who understands what attracted Boyle to the cause is journalist Henry MacDonald.
The Irish National Liberation Army were a breakaway faction from the official IRA. When the officials declared a ceasefire in 1972, a minority of that organisation was disgruntled, didn't agree with ending the armed campaign. About a third to a quarter of the organisation broke away. They formed a political party, the Irish Republican Socialist Party, and they had an armed wing, which later became the INLA. They had a cult of the personality in Seamus Costello, a former IRA veteran from the 50s, who was the key founder of the INLA. It's highly significant that Michael Boyle was from Bray because Seamus Costello's base was Bray. He was a councillor there. In addition, there were a lot of people from Belfast on the run living in that part of the world in the 1970s. So he would have come across them. They were living in safe houses in Bray and places like that.
Sure, Margaret.
It's logical that he would have been attracted to an organisation like that, which had a base down there.
Well, whether Michael Boyle was a member of the INLA or not is still a matter of conjecture, but I actually believe he was. And I believe he loved the association with republicanism. He'd love to be much more a freedom fighter than just an ordinary, decent criminal. It was part of his fantasy, his elevation from ordinary, decent criminal to something straight out of a Hollywood drama.
The oldest question in criminology is, why do some individuals commit crime? Is it in their nature? Were they born that way? Or is it in their nurture, how they were brought up, the circumstances in which they lived their lives, their relationships with their parents, their peers, their friends? In Mickey Boyle's case, it was probably a messy combination of both.
Before 1970, Michael Boyle had only been convicted of minor offences. But his dalliance with republicanism introduced the Bray gangster to a new criminal enterprise: armed robbery. Criminologist Emma Kelly is an expert on the changing face of crime in Ireland throughout the late 1960s and early 70s.
There was an explosion of crime, and majoritively gun crime. The guns came from places, again, in England, like Birmingham, London, Manchester, and it was essentially free trade, so it was very, very simple to import guns into the country at the time. Also, it took the emphasis away from the government's views on other types of crime. So if a crime wasn't considered sectarian violence, it wasn't considered terrorism, it was considered not serious. And unfortunately, what that enabled ordinary decent criminals to do was maximise impact quite under the radar in terms of drugs, guns and things like armed robberies.
Right lads, let's make this quick and easy. Anybody gives you trouble, you hit them. You don't shoot. Guns are for show only, right? Are you ready? Yeah! Are you ready? Yeah! Do it! Go, 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 go!
Do you think Mickey Boyle used this kind of uncertainty to his advantage?
If you think of it like a young, naughty school child in school, if the headmaster's back is turned, that's when you're at your most creative and your most productive. So essentially, the government and the Gardaí, they were distracted, and so he made hay whilst the sun was shining.
Come on, come on, come on, come on, come on, move! Move, 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 move!
In the criminal underworld, armed robbers are seen as the creme de la creme of offenders. Instrumentally, clearly, they can make a lot of money. But there's much more going on here psychologically. Indeed, one armed robber described the commission of this type of offence as more addictive than cocaine. So when we think about why Michael Boyle might have chosen to commit armed robbery, not only do we have to consider those instrumental gains, we have to also consider what he gained psychologically.
He robbed the AIB in Enniskerry, and he robbed the Bank of Ireland out in Rathdrum. And he was caught for those, and he was to be tried in the Central Criminal Court in Dublin. And he was being held in custody. And he asked one of the prison officers, could he go to the toilet?
What are you thinking, Michael? You've got a real chance to change everything and take a different direction.
Far too pretty to be going to prison. Isn't that right, boys? Just gonna spend a penny. Damn all yours.
For over 2 weeks, the authorities struggled to find any trace of Boyle. However, a chance encounter at the races brought the elusive criminal back onto the radar of Detective Tom Connolly.
Now, the 1st of May, 75, the annual Punchestown Racing Festival was on here. It was the biggest day of the year. Ladies' Day. A serving prison officer from Mountjoy Prison happened to be at the races. And he told the Gardaí there that he had seen Michael Boyle, who had escaped from the prison officers on the 14th or 15th of April at the races.
So, Tom, this is obviously all brand new, but what was the architecture, what was the layout on the day when you had that infamous encounter with Michael Boyle?
Well, from my recollection, going back 41 years, the whole place has completely changed.
Did you consider that he might be armed? Because, of course, he was Michael Boyle.
Yes.
You did?
Yes.
He clearly was up to no good, because he arrived here with a gun. He had a balaclava stuffed down his trousers,
yes,
and he was wearing a wig. So it was probably likely that he was coming to rob the takings from that day here, that Ladies' Day.
Well, it's very likely that he had some crime in mind.
Give me the fucking door. Fuck off, you stupid fuck.
At this stage, you had a gun. You were chasing Michael Boyle through the crowds. There are people standing up there going in for a drink after the parade ring, and you were knocking them over like skittles.
No. I was taking the shortcut. If he turned, I was taking the shortcut.
And whoever was in your way...
I hit up against people, and I know I did knock some people.
That's the... You're under arrest! Get the fuck out of your fucking brain! Fuck off!
So this is it.
This is it now.
Scott Medal for Bravery.
There you are. You hold it.
That's the gold medal. Wow. Ever a medal like this was deserved, it was for the actions that day, eh? You know, 9 years later, you were in a hospital, and you went in there, and he recognised you.
He recognised me.
And this time, of course...
This time I was in uniform, and first time he saw me in uniform after 9 years, and straight away, Punchestown. Yeah, I was surprised, but he recognised me. Yeah, he had reason to.
Now, after that 4-year sentence for armed robbery, his life took a bizarre turn.
His father had been in the Irish Army, and Michael decided he'd go over to England and join the British Army. And he went over there and he enlisted in the British Army. Now, he didn't stay in it. He deserted from the British Army and came back over to Ireland, where he got caught up again in committing further crime like burglaries and then carrying out shooting incidents.
Tonight, 1,000 troops have been moved in to assist Gardaí who have surrounded a wooded area outside of Ballinamore. It's believed up to 3 gunmen could still be taking refuge there.
In the 1970s, the Provisional IRA began kidnapping high-profile businessmen. The victims were used as bargaining chips for the release of IRA prisoners.
The Gardaí and the soldier killed during a gun battle this afternoon died as a result of wounds received when a grenade was thrown at the search party.
The INLA get in on this racket, most infamously with Desi O'Hare, who kidnaps a wealthy Dublin dentist, John O'Grady, and is quite a horrific kidnapping in the sense that he actually mutilates Mr. O'Grady.
Mr. O'Grady last week had the tips of both index fingers chopped off by the kidnappers. They left them in this church in Carlow with a note and photographs for an intermediary, Father Brian Darcy, to find. He was on his way to Cork this morning to hand over the £1.5 million ransom.
So you can see how criminals, having learnt from the IRA and subsequently the INLA in terms of extorting money through kidnaps, get involved in this whole business too.
They could see that this was a way of getting easy cash, and quite a substantial amount of cash, and you weren't putting yourself at the same risk of walking into a bank. Michael became involved in kidnapping people. The most famous kidnapping that he was involved in was William Somerville, was a solicitor, and he was living out in the Skerry there.
Mom! Stop! Don't you fucking move! Do you hear me? I'm taking your son, and I want £50,000 tomorrow, do you hear me?
Leave him. Please.
I will go with you. She will go to the bank.
Come here! Move! Move it! Down those fucking stairs. Make it snappy. Move it! You drive, Ponce Boy.
By putting on a northern accent, Boyle was trying to convince his victims that the kidnapping was a Republican plot. John O'Keefe is a psychologist who has studied offenders and their traits. He has analysed Boyle's eclectic criminal career.
John, how are we to make sense of the fact that Michael Boyle was a kidnapper, a bank robber, before becoming a hitman in his 40s?
Boyle is very impulsive. He will move from action to task to crime. Whatever comes his way, whatever opportunity avails itself, he will be there for it. So for him to go from a bank robber to a kidnapper makes sense, because what he's doing is he's staging it upwards. Bank robbing involves a more generic kind of fear he's giving to people, but kidnapping, you're face to face with the person. And of course then when you're talking about him being a contract hitman, you're seeing the whites of the eyes of your victim. With his type of personality disorder, that would be gold dust.
Hello?
Leave the money in a burnt-out car on the main road to Enniskerry.
All right, yes.
Your missus paid up, huh? She did a good job. Shut up now. Gina, come on.
And he was found from that and charged with that and brought before the court. But despite Garda objections and everything else, he was released on bail pending a trial on it. And while he was out on that, he decided he'd do another kidnapping.
He seems to be incredibly prolific and brazen.
Oh, yeah. Well, you see, his attitude was like, if you're caught for one, you're going to be caught for another. You might as well do it. And I think that was his attitude, and possibly at the back of it as well, if I get enough money for the second one, I can do a runner and live on the proceeds of that crime.
To my mind, the kidnapping of William Somerville reveals so much about the criminal that Michael Boyle was. On one hand, he was smart enough to hit upon a crime that was both lucrative and low risk. On the other hand, he made such basic errors that he was bound to get caught. So what does this tell us about the criminal Michael Boyle? Well, I think it tells us that he was equally at home in jail as on the street. In fact, I don't think it mattered to him where he ended up. But what do we make of Michael Boyle, the loner, the serial burglar, the serial bank robber and then hitman, the son of a soldier, and a soldier himself, a deserter, an expert escape artist? This is a gangster that simply defies expectations. By 1995, Boyle was once again a free man and began to associate with Dublin's underworld, connecting with notorious gangster George the Penguin Mitchell. Journalist Nicola Tallant has followed his career closely. Paint a picture of the crime scene here in the 1990s, and who were the main players?
Well, the main player was Martin the General Cahill, who was murdered in 1994 by the IRA, but he was a prolific robber. And along with him really was John Gilligan, who went on to be a drug dealer, George the Penguin Mitchell, who had started out life as a biscuit delivery man, but had moved into crime and into armed robbery also.
By the mid-1990s, Mitchell had moved out of armed robbery and into Dublin's lucrative drug trade.
The likes of George the Penguin Mitchell saw the kind of the money that could be made and saw it as a bit less risky than armed robbery, and he moved into it, and very quickly he became the biggest distributor in Ireland and moved into the UK market. He saw London and he wanted a bit of the action there.
Journalist Graham Johnson has written extensively about Britain's criminal underworld and the involvement of Irish criminals in London's gang wars.
In the 80s and 90s, if you were a gangster in London, this was a golden age. But it was also a very dangerous time as well. You had the kind of managed decline of the old crime groups on the manor. So the Richardson family, they were getting into other things, and also their power base was dissipating a bit. So you got these new groups coming up. The second reason, South London was always a place, and Kent was always a place where armed robbers came from and did their business. And they were getting into bigger and bigger armed robberies. And the third thing was drugs. It exploded, you know, millions and millions of pounds and loads of firepower.
So this was a lucrative but a very dangerous age for London gangsters.
That's right, yeah, it was very dangerous.
But of course, in order for Mitchell to attack the scene in England, he must have had some pretty effective enforcers.
He was funded or financed by a man called Peter Daly in London, and Daly was at war at the time with the Brindle family, who had come up after the Richardsons and the Crays, those famous crime families.
Peter Daly gets the bright idea of hiring one of these hitmen from Ireland, a professional, trained killer, to come to London and stake out his target, the Brindles, with a view to killing them on behalf of Peter Daly.
And of course, the Irish criminal market had something which the UK market didn't have, and that is we had ex-IRA killers and ex-IRA assassins.
Yeah, and highly trained, highly skilled. They were recognised worldwide for that. Now, all the drugs gangs in the UK would have had connections with Northern Ireland or with the South, where there was always, you know, when there would have been maybe a slight ceasefire at some point, there would have been all these people marketing themselves as hitmen for hire or, you know, muscle for hire. So Mitchell, while around 94, 95, had his own problems with the IRA, he still would have had connections with INLA or the other factions.
Where does Mickey Boyle feature on this landscape?
Well, Mickey Boyle was somebody who was for hire for whoever wanted him. Daly wanted the row with the Brindles finished, meaning he wanted to win it. He wanted them out of the picture so as he could take over their turf, and he turned to Mitchell for help with some muscle for that, and Mitchell hired Boyle and others with the plan that they were going to take out all the Brindle brothers.
East End hardman Dave Courtney knew many of the major players within London's criminal underworld around this time.
Dave, how did you first come to meet Mickey Boyle?
I met him as he became my next-door neighbour when I was in prison at the in Belmarsh, the special unit, and I was in there with Charlie Cray and the people that had done the Rettendon murder and Mickey Boyle, you know, and that's how I met him, yeah. He was my next-door neighbour. I knew him very well for a whole year.
What sort of man was he? Did you form an impression about him?
I don't want to go and muck up what you've already heard, but I'm afraid he didn't have murderer written on his face where me personally was concerned, nor did he have it on his personality. He obviously wasn't someone that would attempted to murder somebody, but he seemed like a very pleasant, respectful, polite man to me. I'm sorry about that, but I know what he done was wrong.
What George Mitchell didn't realise was that Boyle was also talking to the police.
Hello, Michael.
Oh, do I have a story for you? You're going to get your money's worth out of this one.
Boyle himself was arrested here in Ireland in February 1995 on an unrelated matter. He immediately turned informant for the guards.
I've been hired to carry out a major hit. Big time London fella, Tony Brindle. Do you know him? Anyway, he's a top dog, and you know who wants him dead. And guess who they got to do the job? So that must be worth a few bob, what?
Boyle was told by the guards not to go ahead with the plot. Obviously, he wasn't to get involved in the murder, to make some excuse, which he didn't. He wanted 20 grand for his information, but he also seemed to want to make the money on the hit as well. But he did feel he could manipulate everybody, even the Garda handlers. He always felt that he knew how he was kind of nearly the handler rather than they were.
He was a mouthy person. He liked to promote things that he wasn't actually doing, yeah? And he made himself sound a little bit of a bad man. He was just blown into a little ego thing of someone believing the shit that he'd told them and said, would you do this for me in this other country and I'll give you a load of money? And he went, yeah, it's nothing to do with criminal, Boyle. He's a dickhead. He's a fool. And someone has asked a dickhead with a scary accent to do a job that he couldn't do. And that's why he didn't do it.
Dave Courtney will be an acquired taste for some people. But I think what he did very convincingly was conjure up a picture of who Mickey Boyle was in terms of the man that was in the cell next to him. And the picture that he paints is not one of a master hitman at all. He paints a picture of a fantasist, what I would describe as a dilettante hitman.
Boyle may have been a fantasist, but his desire to kill Brindle was firmly rooted in reality. In 1995, serial offender Michael Boyle was dispatched to London to murder East End gangster Tony Brindle. What his crime bosses didn't realise, though, was that at the same time as Boyle was planning his hit on Brindle, he was also working as a paid informant for the police.
Hello, Michael.
Oh, do I have a story for you?
It was no great surprise that he was actually hired as a hitman. What was surprised was that he actually went and he told the police that he had been approached to sort out a row between London gangsters over in London, the Brindles and the Dailies.
Former Metropolitan Police Detective Clive Driscoll has investigated the circumstances behind Boyle's mission to London. Why was Tony Brindle such a target at that time?
Well, I think Mr. Brindle at the time was certainly suspected of quite a lot of criminal activity, and it appears to me that there had been some tension, a conflict with a family called Mr. Peter Daly, and so therefore I believe that was why he became a target. There seemed to have been quite a friction between, if you like, rival criminal elements.
Boyle was dispatched to London to take out Tony Brindle on behalf of Daly. So why was a Dublin gangster chosen to carry out a hit in England?
In the late 80s and 90s, a lot of hitmen in London got wiped out or they went to jail. Therefore, it gave job opportunities to Irish hitmen who came over and they took the jobs.
Dave, do you think in the 70s, 80s and 90s, the Irish offender, the Irish gangster, had a special cachet in the organised crime of England and Wales?
If anyone ever went to you, I fucking love you. That accent was scary to English people once. Yeah, the Irish accent was scary to English people once, and their input into the whole British gangster scene was huge, right? And the children over in their country were brought up with men running around their back gardens with camouflage on, machine guns, water cannons, bombs, hits, kneecappings, right? The kids were growing up completely different than our kids. Our kids was in cubs, yeah? Their kids were growing up with that in their back gardens, and by the time they turn into men, they are naughtier men than English men. They were telling the fucking truth, mate. They were real, yeah? They would shoot you.
It wasn't like nowadays, where it's a spur-of-the-moment thing. You know, it's a young kid who pulls a gun out on an older gangster and shoots him and then runs off. This was really carefully planned, which is like the trademark of these Irish assassins. You don't take part in the contract negotiations. You're just given a name, an address on the phone.
What you got for me?
Got a job for you in London.
Good man yourself. I know the rest.
And also what he does, which is another key thing, what the Irish people do.
Johnny, what you got for me?
Well, one of these for you here.
They don't bring the guns with them, or the explosives. They source them locally from a trusted quartermaster.
Yeah, we'll go with that. Jono, yeah, that's the one. I'm gonna get that one, yeah? Fucking lead. Oh, yeah.
So in the run-up to the hit, Boyle puts him under close quarter surveillance. So that Brindle can't move, especially in the morning when he's coming out to go to work, without Boyle knowing about it.
You're a long way from home, Mickey.
Steady. There's no difference than being back in Dublin.
Listen to yourself. This is just a fantasy.
He arrived to carry out the hit not realising that there was actually surveillance on Brindle at the time, because as a tout he had said that Tony Brindle was the only one that wasn't going to get targeted.
Maybe that was almost Mr Boyle feeling that the police wouldn't care about Mr Brindle and certainly wouldn't galvanise an operation to protect Mr Brindle. So maybe that was an underestimation by Mr Boyle.
Police!
Law-abiding people think that committing crime is irrational.
Am I dying? Am I?
The offender's going to be caught and spend
a significant proportion of their life in prison. But that's not how offenders see it. Instead, they think of the instrumental and psychological gains that they get from committing crime. Criminologists sometimes call those gains the joys of transgression. Let's think about what those joys provide for an offender like Michael Boyle. Firstly, he gets money, but more importantly, psychologically, he gains a status and power that's denied to him in other aspects of his life. And we see that in the career that Michael Boyle has as an offender.
Although Boyle was hit 3 times by police marksmen, miraculously he survived, and in 1997 he stood trial for the attempted murder of Tony Brindle.
When it came to his trial, he named Georgie Mitchell as the man who hired him. That's something that Georgie Mitchell to this day will not forget. Boyle claimed that he didn't want to kill Brindle. Now, I mean, he's been a proven liar, really, time and again, but he claimed he only wanted to kneecap him, and yet he took shot at him from a distance. Most kneecappings are obviously carried out up close and personal. He believed that his girlfriend's life was under threat from Georgie Mitchell, and that's why he carried out the hit on Brindle at all. Now, Mitchell, whatever else he is, has absolutely no history of that kind of sort of murderous intentions towards women. It was a half-baked attempt at making the court feel that he was afraid and had to do it from that reason. I think everybody could see through it.
In his statements, he was very persistent in everyone knowing that the police had said, when he shoots Tony Brindle, then shoot him. Yeah, that was there in his statements. I read them. Yeah, so he was so intent on going, yeah, I did do that, but they're worse than me.
I can't ever imagine any police service anywhere in the world really giving permission for someone to carry out an assassination. Now, on this occasion, obviously, you know, they waited too long. I think they'd admit that to themselves, but I don't believe they even remotely thought that he would fire through the back of the van. And then once that had happened, they acted very, very quickly. And there's no doubt they prevented Mr. Brindle from being killed.
Michael Boyle was sentenced to life in prison for attempting to kill Tony Brindle in Rotherhithe in 1995. During the 9-week trial, the jury heard that the 48-year-old hitman, who boasted links with Irish terrorist groups, had become involved in a murderous feud.
First glance, you wonder how could somebody who's such an architect of mayhem and disruption become a reliable enforcer for gangland. And then you begin to understand that actually he weaponized that unpredictability and chaos, and that's what terrorized his victims. You know, in essence, though, he was a narcissist, and he had this internal alternative reality where he believed he could control events, the true course of events, and play everybody off against each other. Ultimately, though, he simply played too many cards and had to reveal his hand very publicly in a trial where he lost, was convicted and jailed, and now, inevitably, is forever a dead man walking.
Do you think Mickey Boyle was just a fantasist?
I know Mickey Boyle was a fantasist. I lived beside him for a year. He is a fantasist, yeah, he's a fool.
He was a loner, he was secretive, daring, dangerous. And I'm not surprised the way he ended up when he went to England, because his luck had to run out at some stage.
To this day, even though it was 1995 and we're talking 21 years ago, the threat of retaliation is still there for him. And yet he's a survivor. He's nearly at his 70s now, and he's back in Ireland and he's finishing up his sentence here.
How do you define Michael Boyle as a hitman?
I felt that he genuinely fitted one of our types of hitman. I felt he was a dilettante. I felt that his hit that we know that he committed was when he was rather elderly. He was in his late 40s, and that doesn't fit the classic pattern.
The end there shows that he was a declining force, and that certainly shows that he was a fantasist insofar as he felt he could play every side, play every which way, and still come out as a winner.
If he is, as we've described, a fantasist, a dilettante, how does he convince somebody like George the Penguin Mitchell to hook up with him, to use him?
Boyle, at first presentation, you know, he's got Republican connections, he's an effective enforcer to a certain degree, and the soft skills of a dapper gangster who can engage with the justice system and with lawyers and gangsters equally. And I think that's what Mitchell saw in him.
But we're agreed, in terms of Michael Boyle, he's a dilettante hitman.
I think he fits that perfectly.
From the 9-1, switch that over, that's the down. I was at the West Coast, now I'm in the East Coast. Shawty wanna